From the ashes of World War II to the cockpits of modern fighter jets, from flying boats that crossed oceans in luxury to drones that never need a pilot, one company has been there for nearly every chapter of aviation history.
We'll focus on the main aircraft models only, not every single variant. For each aircraft, we'll break down its mission, first flight, production numbers, and lasting impact.
Let's start at the beginning, the 1920s. Aviation is still in its infancy, and Boeing is building fighters for the Navy. First up, the Boeing F-2B. This biplane fighter first flew in 1926 and could perform acrobatics that would make your stomach turn. It was known for its agility and was a favorite among Navy pilots. Only 32 production aircraft were built, plus one prototype. It was more of a specialized run than a mass-produced fighter, but it proved Boeing could build military aircraft. Next, the Boeing F-4B. This was the Navy's main carrier-capable fighter in the early 1930s. It was essentially Boeing's next evolution of their biplane fighter line, faster, more refined, and carrier-ready. 187 were delivered to the U.S. Navy before newer designs replaced it. Not a huge number, but for the early 1930s, that was significant. Now let's jump to the Army, the Boeing P-26 Peashooter. This was the first all-metal monoplane fighter used by the U.S. Army Air Corps. It had fixed landing gear and an open cockpit, still pretty old school, but the all-metal construction was revolutionary. Around 150 were built in the early 1930s. It was a bridge between the old biplane era and modern fighters. But Boeing wasn't just building fighters. They had bigger ambitions. They wanted to change commercial aviation. And in 1933, they did something revolutionary. The Boeing Model 247. All-metal construction, retractable landing gear. This wasn't just another plane. This was the blueprint for every modern airliner that came after it. It only carried about 10 passengers, and just 75 were built in the early 1930s. But here's why it mattered. Before the 247, airliners were basically flying buses made of fabric. After the 247, the entire industry changed direction. Boeing wasn't done innovating. Next came the Boeing 307 Stratoliner. This was the first airliner with a pressurized cabin, meaning it could fly higher and smoother than anything else in the sky. No more oxygen masks for passengers, no more turbulence at low altitude. Only 10 were built in the late 1930s, but it proved something crucial. Comfort sells. But the most extravagant Boeing of this era? The Boeing 314 Clipper. This was a flying boat, and not just any flying boat. This massive aircraft crossed the Atlantic and Pacific in absolute luxury. Sleeper cabins, fine dining, and champagne at 10,000 feet. It carried passengers in ways that made modern first class look ordinary. Only 12 were built between 1938 and 1941. Why so few? Because the world was about to go to war, and Boeing was about to build something very different. World War II changed everything. Suddenly, Boeing wasn't building luxury flying boats. They were building bombers, and they built a lot of bombers. The B-17 Flying Fortress. This is the plane you've seen in every World War II movie. 4 engines, 13 machine guns, and a reputation for taking unbelievable damage and still making it home. Over 12,700 were built between 1936 and 1945. That's more than one B-17 rolling off the line every hour at peak production. It became a symbol of American air power over Europe. But Boeing didn't stop there. They built something even more advanced, the B-29 Super Fortress. Pressurized cabins, so crews didn't need oxygen masks at high altitude, remote-controlled gun turrets, and the range to strike Japan from bases thousands of miles away. This was one of the most technologically advanced aircraft of World War II,
and it also dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The B-29 literally helped end World War II. Nearly 4,000 were built. After the war, Boeing had a problem. They'd just built thousands of bombers, but nobody needed bombers anymore. So they did what any smart company would do. They turned a bomber into an airliner, the Boeing 377 Stratocruiser. This was basically a B-29, but luxurious. Sleeper cabins, lounges. It carried around 100 passengers in style. 55 were built from 1947 to 1950. It was expensive, but it kept Boeing alive while they figured out what came next. And what came next would change aviation forever. The 1950s, the jet engine has arrived, and Boeing is about to make a billion-dollar bet. The Boeing 707. This is the plane that started the jet age. Cruising at Mach 0.8, nearly 600 miles per hour, it could carry about 140 passengers across continents in half the time of propeller planes. Airlines went crazy for it. Militaries wanted it. Around 1,000 were built between 1958 and 1979. The 707 didn't just change Boeing, it changed the world. Suddenly, regular people could afford to fly internationally. Air travel exploded. Boeing tried to build on that success with the Boeing 728. This was a shortened, lighter version of the 707 meant for shorter routes. It actually flew faster than most airliners of its time, but it didn't sell well. Sometimes being first matters more than being faster. Only 154 were built between 1960 and 1967. But Boeing's next jet, massive success, the Boeing 727. 3 rear-mounted engines, excellent short-field performance. This thing was designed for smaller airports, and it excelled at it. It carried 130 to 180 passengers and became extremely popular worldwide. Over 1,800 were built from 1963 to 1984. It became one of Boeing's best sellers of the era. And then came the legend, the Boeing 737. This is the most produced jet airliner in history, a short to medium-range aircraft used by airlines everywhere, seating roughly 85 to 220 people depending on the variant. First flew in 1967, still in production today. Over 11,000 built. Think about that, 11,000 aircraft. That's more than every other Boeing airliner combined. In 1969, Boeing did something insane. They built the Boeing 747, the jumbo jet, the queen of the skies. This was the world's first wide-body airliner, and it was massive. It could carry over 400 passengers. It had a second deck. It was so big, people thought it would never sell. Boeing bet the entire company on it. It didn't fail. 1,574 were built over 54 years, from 1969 to 2023. The 747 democratized long-haul travel. Suddenly, flying to Europe or Asia wasn't just for the rich, it was for everyone. Next up, the Boeing 757, a narrow-body jet airliner with long range and strong performance. It became incredibly popular on transatlantic routes because it could fly far without needing 4 engines. It typically seats 180 to 230 passengers. About 1,050 were built between 1981 and 2004. Pilots loved flying it. Airlines loved its efficiency. The 767, a wide-body twin-engine jet used for medium to long-haul flights and cargo. It seats around 200 to 300 passengers in passenger configuration. But here's what's interesting. It's still being built today as a freighter. Cargo airlines love this plane. Over 1,300 built since 1981, with freighter production ongoing. And then the 777, a large, long-range, wide-body jet known for powerful engines and incredible reliability. It carries 300 to 400 passengers and became a backbone of long-haul travel. Airlines could finally cross entire oceans on just 2 engines instead of needing 4. Introduced in 1995, around 1,700 built, and it's still going strong. And finally, the modern marvel, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. This plane uses advanced composite materials for fuel efficiency and passenger comfort. It flies long distances with fewer passengers, typically 240 to 330, but uses way less fuel doing it. First delivered in 2011, about 1,100 built so far. This is Boeing's vision of the future: lighter, more efficient, better for passengers and the planet. Now, there's one more Boeing jet we need to talk about, the Boeing 717. This is a small, efficient, short-haul jet that was originally designed as the McDonnell Douglas MD-95 before Boeing acquired McDonnell Douglas. It typically seats around 100 passengers and is known for reliability and low operating costs. About 156 were built from 1998 to 2006. It never became a bestseller, but it filled a specific niche well.
Now, let's shift gears. While Boeing was revolutionizing commercial aviation, they never stopped building military aircraft. During the Cold War, Boeing built some of the most important bombers in U.S. history. First, the Boeing B-47 Stratojet. This was an early jet bomber with swept wings, designed for nuclear missions. It marked the transition from propeller bombers to jet-powered strategic bombers. Over 2,000 were built in the 1950s. It was fast, it was modern, and it showed the Soviets that America's bomber force had entered the jet age. But the real legend, the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, a long-range strategic bomber that's still flying today. It can carry nuclear and conventional weapons and has incredible endurance. 744 were built, and it's been in service since 1955. Here's what's insane. The Air Force plans to keep flying B-52s until 2050. That means some of these planes will serve 100 years. Grandfathers, fathers, and sons have all flown the same airframe. No other aircraft in history comes close to that record. Boeing also built the aircraft that keep militaries moving around the world. The Boeing C-17 Globemaster III, a large military transport capable of carrying tanks and heavy cargo into short runways. It's vital for global airlift missions, getting troops and equipment anywhere in the world fast. 279 were built between 1991 and 2015. Before the C-117 was the Boeing C-97 Stratofighter, a big piston-engine military transport derived from the B-29 family, used for heavy lift in the late 1940s and 1950s. It first flew in 1944 and entered service around 1947. Only 77 were built as transports, but the same basic airframe spawned a much larger tanker fleet. That tanker fleet was the Boeing KC-97 Stratofighter. This was the aerial refueling version of the C-97 family. It was slower than jets, but crucial during the transition era before better tankers arrived. Production was huge compared to the transport version. Hundreds were built to keep Cold War bombers in the air. And then, Boeing built the tanker that changed everything, the Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker, an aerial refueling aircraft based on the 707 platform. It has refueled U.S. and Allied aircraft for decades. Over 800 were built. It's been in service since 1957, and many are still flying today. That's 70 years of service. Finally, the modern replacement, the Boeing KC-46 Pegasus, a modern tanker based on the 766 airframe with advanced refueling systems. It's designed to replace those aging KC-135s. It entered service in 2019. Over 100 have been delivered so far, with more on the way.
Boeing also built some of the most specialized command and control aircraft ever made. First, the Boeing E-4 Nightwatch. This is the famous Doomsday plane, a heavily modified 747-200 built to keep command and control alive during extreme national emergencies, including nuclear war. It first flew in 1973 and entered service in 1974. Only 4 were built, and they're still in service today. The Boeing E-6 Mercury, a command and communications relay aircraft based on the 707 used by the U.S. Navy for the Tucamo mission, basically ensuring messages can reach nuclear forces, including submarines, no matter what happens. First flight was 1987. It entered service in 1989. 16 were built. The Boeing RC-135, long-running reconnaissance aircraft derived from the C-135 and 707 era airframes. These planes collect intelligence using advanced sensors and electronics. They've been heavily upgraded over time and remain critical for intelligence collection. Dozens were built and modified into various reconnaissance variants. The Boeing E-7 Sentry, better known as AWACS, an airborne radar surveillance aircraft with that giant rotating radar dome on top. It provides airborne command and control. Basically, it can see hundreds of miles in every direction and coordinate entire air battles. 68 were built since the 1970s. It became the backbone of NATO air operations. The Boeing P-8 Poseidon, a maritime patrol aircraft based on the 737 used for anti-submarine warfare and surveillance over oceans. It's fast, modern, and packed with sensors. Over 200 have been built since 2010, and production continues. And the Boeing E-7 Wedgetail, an airborne early warning and control aircraft based on the modern 737. Unlike the AWACS, it uses a fixed radar array instead of a spinning dome. First flight was 2004. It entered service in the 2000s and is now being adopted by multiple air forces, including the U.S. Air Force. Now let's talk fighters. The Boeing F-15 Eagle, a high-performance air superiority fighter designed to dominate the skies. It can exceed Mach 2.5 and has an incredible combat record. 104 wins, 0 losses in air-to-air combat. Over 1,600 have been built since 1972, and it's still undefeated. The Boeing FA-18 Hornet, a versatile carrier-based fighter and ground attack. It's incredibly maneuverable and has been the backbone of U.S. Navy carrier operations for decades. About 1,480 were built from the late 1970s onward.
Boeing didn't just build planes, they built helicopters that changed modern warfare. The Boeing CH-47 Chinook, a heavy-lift helicopter with tandem rotors used to transport troops and cargo. It's fast for a helicopter and extremely reliable. It's been in service since 1960. Over 1,300 have been built, and it's still in production today. That's 65 years of continuous service. The Boeing AH-64 Apache, the most feared attack helicopter on Earth. 30mm nose-mounted cannon, Hellfire missiles, advanced sensors that let it hunt tanks in complete darkness. First flight 1975, entered service in 1986, still in production. Over 2,500 Apaches have been built, making it one of the most successful attack helicopters ever.
And the Boeing V-22 Osprey, a tilt rotor that takes off like a helicopter but flies faster like a turboprop airplane.
It's used for assault support, cargo, and special operations. It's weird, it's complicated, but it works. First flight 1989, entered service in 2005. Finally, let's talk about the future, drones. The Boeing MQ-25 Stingray, an unmanned carrier-based refueling drone for the U.S. Navy. It extends the range of carrier aircraft without risking pilots. It's entering service in the 2020s and represents the future of naval aviation. And the Boeing Scan Eagle, a small, long-endurance reconnaissance UAV used for surveillance, especially from ships and remote bases. It first flew in 2002 and became widely used because it's simple, persistent, and effective. And there you have it. Every major aircraft Boeing has ever built, from biplanes to bombers, from flying boats to stealth drones, from the plane that started the jet age to the most produced airliner in history. Boeing has built over 100,000 aircraft across more than a century of flight. They've changed how we travel, how we fight wars, and how we see the world. Love them or hate them, Boeing's fingerprints are all over aviation history, and they're not done yet. If you made it this far, you're officially a Boeing expert. Hit that like button, subscribe for more aviation deep dives, and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite Boeing aircraft of all time? I'll see you in the next one.